Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Sacred Connections podcast, your space for holistic and spiritual well-being. And I'm Tonya Morrissey and proudly your spiritual mentor. I'm really excited to connect with you today because a client of mine asked me recently, Ton, when did you start connecting with your divine feminine energy? And, what has it done for your journey? And yeah, she just brought me way back with that question. I ended up going on a deep journey of reflection and just how much my life has changed since embodying my divine feminine energy. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today is my journey with this beautiful energy. And hopefully by sharing my story, it will encourage you to connect with this healing energy and how you can start doing so today. Or if you already connect with this energy, perhaps how you can connect with it deeper. And this episode isn't just for women, by the way. I often encourage men, the men that I work with, to also learn about this healing energy. Because when I say feminine, I'm not talking about gender. We all embody a divine feminine energy within us. And it's what helps us to create a balance within our mind, our physical body, and our energetic body. So it is irregardless of gender. And I found that when men do learn about this energy, it allows them to be a better partner, friend, work colleague to those that do operate more in their feminine energy. But the truth is, it's not just women, there are men out there that completely embody their feminine energy way more. I have a friend who is far more in his feminine than I am. And it's one of the most beautiful things to witness because it just further proves how it's irregardless of gender, it's energy. And so with my own personal journey then, so when I was growing up, I was always considered the girly girl. So for those of you that might know, I am a twin and her name is Louise. And so growing up, we were often like Mary Kate and Aisling. I was a girly girl, she was a tomboy, because I was just so naturally just so my feminine. I was also playful, spontaneous, quite emotional, vulnerable, a natural nurturer. I was very creative, very outgoing. And so, yeah, I really love just embracing the flow life. I was that child who just was quite naturally goofy, artistic, creative, just kind of go with the flow. And then my sister, Louise, who does actually embody all the similar qualities, but she definitely would have been just naturally more of a tomboy in the fact that she would have played sports. She was definitely more logical than I would have been. Definitely thrived more off structure, and they can be qualities from our divine masculine. So yeah, growing up, it's evident just how much I operated a lot from my feminine energy. But then what happened was, as I started to grow up and, move through my teenage years, we have the hormones flying around. Life also happened in between. Unfortunately, not so nice stuff. And so I did go through a deep emotional journey because I did become quite desensitized and disconnected from my feminine energy. From what I experienced growing up, it caused me to just shut down, to suppress rather than express my emotions because there wasn't that safe space to do so. I developed quite a hard shell. And that shell just stayed up for years into my early adulthood. And how that manifested was I wasn't affectionate. I wasn't comfortable with receiving affection either. I lost my creative flow. I was definitely more in logic and just structure, focusing on achievements. I kind of lost that part of me that was goofy, and it's a part of me that I'm very proud of. I really love that aspect of myself. But I lost that, just a little spark. And so skip to then into my early 20s. A friend of mine recently became qualified in Reiki, And he was like, Tom, will you be my guinea pig? So I said, yeah, sure, go on. And I remember being a little bit hesitant because it was quite alien for me to just accept a gift like that, a very generous gift. So, inside I was a little bit panicky, but I was like, okay. And then afterwards, when we had the chat, he was like, Tan, I love you, but you really, really are completely imbalanced within your energetic body. Your feminine energy and how I'm just completely moving through this world, my masculine energy, and how it's just not serving me. And he was right, like everything he listed off, I was like, yeah, no, that's me, just emotionally unavailable, not confident, lacking my creativity, kind of lost that spark. Like he was just hitting the nail on the head. And so when he encouraged me then to just, tap more into your feminine energy, and like just something within me stirred. He was very close to the bone. So I was like, okay. And so this is when I started seeking out help then from Pat Delan, who is a shaman in Healing Tree retreats. And he put me on the path to reconnect with my feminine energy. And he gave me the wisdom, tools, and practices that I needed to reignite that flame, essentially. And I'll never forget it. I was brought to the beach and he guided me on a meditation, and he just kept whispering, divine feminine, you're her, you're the divine feminine, just really, really emphasizing how I am her. It's not something that we seek, it's not something that we have to work on, it's just something that we already are. And so that hit me. During that one-to-one session then, he encouraged me to just start very slow and simple, which was with a daily meditation, which at the time seemed like a huge commitment because I was working full time, I was in full time education, I was constantly just outputting energy, exercising, socializing, just not making any space for any sort of spontaneity or self care. And so I remember going, oh, daily meditation, how am I going to squeeze that in? But I did. I used the masculine energy within to create the structure where a daily meditation can fit in. And after practicing meditation on a daily basis and just having that daily dose of pausing, I could really begin to feel the benefits. I noticed my mind just started slowing down, and even my speech. My speech used to be so harsh, really cutthroat. I used to curse the whole time. Now, look, I'm Irish. It's natural for us to say the words here and there, but at that time, it was always quite harsh. It was definitely way too much, and it didn't align to who I was. It was definitely part of that defense mechanism that I had to like fit in with the group that I was in. And so, yeah, my speech started changing, started slowing down. I was noticing how I speak into myself as well, the amount of pressure that I used to put myself under. Like I was leaving no space for spontaneity and sensuality and self-care and self-love. Like all that was so far removed that I started noticing. And we only notice these things when we slow down. And so that's when I started journaling. So I was meditating every day and just embodying how that was already positively affecting me, just slowing down, being more present. And so then I decided to tackle my mindset. Well, maybe not tackle, explore would definitely be a more fair representation. So just explore my mindset, write down what are your thought patterns? How are you speaking to yourself? And it was so evident how I had an inner critic rather than an inner cheerleader. So I started switching that. I started changing my inner dialogue to align to who I truly am. And my inner voice just became a lot more softer, a lot more kinder, a lot more compassionate, which went hand in hand with the meditation. When I started meditating, it allowed space for my divine feminine energy to come to the surface more and manifest through my thoughts. So I could quite literally hear the voice of my feminine energy. And so when I started journaling, then I was allowing her voice to come through more and more so I could start seeing it and practicing it more. And the words that she'd often say is, I am the divine feminine. I am a sensual being. I am a sexual being. I am a goddess. I am confident. I am loved. I am creative. All this beautiful words. It just started transforming into how I speak into myself, because the divine feminine is very much in the body. She's very grounding. And so when I started connecting and changing my thought patterns to align with my divine feminine, I just started embodying those words more. So I noticed my energy started shifting. I was becoming more affectionate. And not just in terms of receiving, but I was hugging, complimenting, but genuinely meaning it. Like, it just started happening. It was a natural ripple effect. And the real transformation came then once I started training in Reiki as well. So I became a Reiki level 1 and a Reiki level 2 practitioner, which is a form of energy healing. So it goes straight into your energetic body and it just allows you to continue to find your inner balance. And so Reiki then, when I started practicing it on myself, was just giving me like that extra boost, that extra energy boost, that rebalance. So that if or when I felt off kilter, it was just like refilling that cup of, oh yeah, let's balance out your feminine and your masculine energy here. So Reiki was definitely a pivotal practice on my journey. And so I started sharing this then, and I noticed my tribe started coming my way. People that were on like a similar journey of also wanting to dive more into their spiritual health, their well-being. And so I started making like what I now like to call my soul tribe. And it's quite an uplifting space. It's community, it's heart centered. And like that was all from connecting with my feminine energy. And this took like 2 years, it didn't just happen overnight, but the changes, they were definitely drastic. I noticed then I started reconnecting with practices such as yoga and dance, which I haven't done in years. So I went through a period where I was just so heavy in my fitness journey. I was also coaching fitness and nutrition, and I wasn't doing the practices that I would have done growing up. I was a dancer since I was 4, and yoga also came into my life when I was a teenager, and I just kind of neglected those practices when I started going through that trauma that I mentioned earlier, that disconnected me from my emotions and put up that shield. And then I just started leaning into fitness and things that were more, practices that didn't require having to be emotionally or spiritually connected, if that makes sense. So like exercise for me now, it still has an important role in my life, but it's because I enjoy it, I get to switch off. Whereas when I started reconnecting with dance, it was like bring me back into my body. I started to find my flow again, and my confidence, my self-love just started going through the roof. Like the connection with my body was so important because I lost that. And that's the thing with the feminine energy. It's an embodiment energy. It requires you to be grounded within your body so that you feel safe within your home, in your vessel, that you're nurturing yourself, nourishing yourself, creating space within your body. And just each step being really proud in the vessel that you came here in, so that you're nurturing, you're nourishing, and you're showing up as your true self. That's how the feminine helps us, is really encourages us to take care of our bodies in a very gentle way. And so my self-love started going through the roof. And this is where the practice of like sensuality and sexuality became huge. A really important aspect of the feminine energy is that she's very sensual and sexual by nature. It's a creative and nurturing energy. And a lot of the time when we hear those two words, we think of partners, like sensual or sexual partners. But what about the connection with yourself? You are allowed to be joyful within your body, to connect with your body, caress yourself lovingly, to explore your body, your pleasures. Like that's all really healthy and allows you to feel more complete as well. You're not cut off from the neck down, the waist down. Like, you're an entire being and you're here for the human experience. And so the feminine encourages you to deepen that connection, the connection with yourself. And yeah, so that became a huge part of my journey and still is till this day. And hence how I get to share this now with others, because I really took the time to embody the divine feminine within. And like, it took me ages to kind of really think about like how much connecting with the feminine energy has completely transformed my life. But like, she brought a lot of space into my life, and she brought me back home to myself, and even encouraged me to make the bigger changes, you know, such as leaving my previous job, going self-employed, opening Connect Studio, because the divine feminine is intuitive by nature. So I started really listening to my heart, following my gut, what really aligns me to me and what brings joy into my life and what I feel like my passions are and my gifts. And so trusting that, and here I am today getting to connect with you, beautiful souls, to now share this wisdom with you, either through my one-to-one Connect program or in my weekly offerings in Connect Studio. All this came to fruition when I allowed my feminine energy to guide the way. You know, she really brought me back home to myself. Even after this, when I'm listening back, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to mention X, Y, or Z. But like, it really has been a journey. Like, it's been a transformative 5 years. You know, that's how long I've been on this journey now with feminine energy, and just the personal, professional experiences I've had, the soulful connections, the connection with quite literally the world around me, people, nature. She's a beautiful energy, quite a healing energy, and we all have access to her. That's the thing. She's the part of us that encourages us to be in our bodies, to explore deeper connections with ourselves, the world around us, to care for each other, to nurture each other, to spark spontaneity, creativity, to follow your intuition. And so, yeah, I hope by sharing my journey on how she has transformed my life, that it would inspire you to start, you know, making space for her to come into your life, whether that's through a daily meditation, journaling, engaging in a yoga practice, a dance practice, you know, things that allow you to be in your body, to go with the flow, to have no structure. That's how your feminine flows. She just encourages you to feel deeply within, to go with your inner flow. And then from this space, you can move forward. So thank you so much for following my journey today. I'm really excited to just see where she continues to bring me, to be honest. I kind of like to personify her, even though she's me, you know, she's a part of what I feel like is my energetic makeup. Yeah, I'm going to continue trusting that space, trusting this energy, and just allow my life to fold in its most unpredictable and beautiful way. So yes, I hope you found this insightful. I would also love to hear your journey with the divine feminine, if you connect with her, or if you would like to, you know, just share whatever you're drawn to down in the comments below, and feel free to message me if you wish for further guidance. But thank you so much. I'm sending you my love always.